So,
And we are live. Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the FPL Injuries Podcast. We love doing these live streams with you, so we decided to do it a little bit early because time, the schedule, the game week is so tight at the moment that we won't be able to do it as normal on a Saturday morning, the breakfast kind of show. So we thought we'd bring it a few days early. We'd do it on a Wednesday because, as always, there is plenty of injury news, and who better to speak to than the man himself, Big Bad Ben Dinnery. But yeah, before we start, Ben, how are you doing today? You looking forward to game week 11?
I'm looking forward to the international break, most definitely. And hopefully, fingers crossed, game week 11, can it be as bad as game week 10? But at least the silver lining was it seemed to be a disaster for most managers across the board.
Yeah.
So I wasn't the only one this week
Yeah.
to have a not so great return on my poor fantasy team.
Yeah. I mean, it was a really bad game week. Average points were down across the board. And, for my own team, I'm just thinking, what can I do to improve things? There's lots of things that I want to do. There's 5 or 6 transfers that I want to do, but not really too sure. You're playing with your microphone.
I'm playing with my mic. I'm playing. We've had a lot of comments in the feedback, and we've had, talk a little bit louder, change your mic. I have got a mic. It's never usually in shot. I normally have it to the side, but tonight I'm going to try it square on and see what comes of it.
I mean, do you think that it's people slightly having a dig at you with your accent? Do you think it's that as well? Because they're saying they didn't understand you. I perfectly understand you. I just think that they're not trying hard enough, really.
If you don't understand me, put the subtitles on. Simples.
Yeah, we should have a translator, somebody kind of doing that for you. But yeah,
that has happened before. Here's that. Sorry to interject. Quick story. Got invited on ESPN live on a Saturday afternoon US show. Had a chat with a researcher, and they said, "Right, yeah, sounds great. Love you to come on. Is it okay if we bring an interpreter?" So they had an Englishman who was based in New York. I was talking to the guy who was based in California. He was asking the questions, I was responding, and then this guy in New York was sort of interpreting and doing this live on-air translation. It was what should have been a 3-minute interview, probably went on for about 15 minutes.
Oh my God. So hang on, how did that work then? Was he kind of going, they'd ask the question, you'd respond, and then they'd go, so what Mr. Dinnery's saying is this?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So you go right. So obviously Newcastle supporter, an example. Crowd was going absolutely ballistic. We loved it, and so the guy in New York was good. So what he means is the crowd were really, really happy to see, and they celebrated profusely. And then it was a good time. Actually, it worked out quite well, and I was invited back on the show. So all good in the hood.
That is so funny. In terms of it then, we've got to talk about game week 11, building up to it. We've got a couple of messages here. Cheekster777 says, evening, guys. And he's also said, Ben, you look like a different person without the beard. I mean, I'm surprised people haven't said anything about my lack of beard. As I said the other day, you had to ID me to see if I was old enough to come on now. It's taken years off. It doesn't feel right as well. I've been walking around the house, walking around the garden, and it feels really, really cold on my face for some reason. But yeah, let's get into it. Flying Dutchman also says, good evening. But yeah, game week 11. Ben, what's the big injury news? I mean, we do have to talk about Conte. I don't know if you want to start off with that, or Kieran Tierney, Keita, Billy Gilmore. There's a lot of stuff to get through kind of building up to the weekend.
I mean, we'll start off with the big team news that's just broke, and the potential implications or ramifications for Ollie and his Manchester United team. We saw Rafael Varane forced off during the first half of their Champions League tie against Atalanta on Tuesday night. Ollie referenced it as a precautionary, how Varane had felt his hamstring. He didn't want to take any chances, and he replaced him. Now, the club just released an update literally about 30 minutes ago, confirming that the Spaniard will be out for around about a month, which will keep him out until early December. Now, ahead of this weekend's big derby, that's not what you want to hear. Of course, in recent matches, we've seen Ollie tweak his formation following the 5-0 drubbing by Liverpool, and that saw him revert to three central defenders, a 3 in attack or a 5 in defence, with Wan-Bissaka and Luke Shaw sort of playing in a slightly advanced role. Now, that potentially is at risk, because we know that also Victor Lindelof picked up a knock in training on Monday. That ruled him out of the Champions League tie. The good news, and what gives United supporters hope, is that Victor Lindelof has been named in the Sweden squad for the upcoming World Cup qualifiers. And their manager said, the national team coach, he said he spoke to Victor Lindelof and he said, it's nothing to worry about. It's just a knock. So, United, should we be worried against that Manchester City attack? You'd have Maguire in the heart of that defence, presumably with Lindelof probably on the right-hand side of him, and maybe Eric Bailly on the left-hand side of him, which doesn't fill me with a great deal of confidence.
Well, talking about Phil, we could see Phil Jones as well if it gets even worse.
Probably not. not in terms of his ability. A very unfortunate guy. Just general fitness. If you're thinking about throwing somebody in who literally has only had a handful of games with the development side in 19-20 months, then it just isn't going to happen, especially against your City rivals.
Yeah, it's unrealistic, but I wouldn't mind seeing Phil back in a Man United shirt. It'd be an amazing redemption story, because like you said there, he's been incredibly unlucky, and putting his footballing abilities aside, you don't want to see that happen to anybody. It'll be interesting to see as well, as you said there, Man United, they've had a lot of bad data with their defence, and the fact that they're losing Varane just makes me worried even more for them. And just to kind of explain then quickly, Ben, why is this injury so bad that he'll be out for a month?
Yeah, we're probably looking at around about a grade 2 hamstring tear, so fairly extensive in terms of the damage to that muscle fiber, in and around maybe 30 to 40% possibly. So that's why we're looking at around about a month. A little bit more severe than a grade 1, which could be anywhere between 7 and 21 days, but not as bad as a grade 3 total rupture, which may result in hamstring surgery. Varane's been a little bit unfortunate. Of course, it's only his second game back since he picked up that groin adductor problem playing for Spain in the Nations League. He was forced off in that game. So people may question whether Ollie should have started him in back-to-back games, in quick succession, knowing that he was just coming back from injury. But, in hindsight, then it probably wasn't the right move to make. But given the pressure that he's been under, it's not surprising that he did throw him in there.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation with Varane. And the problem is as well with the hamstring kind of injury is it has such a high risk of re-injury as well. So, he's kind of come back, as you said there, almost been rushed a little bit. Harry Maguire was as well. And it is almost symbolic of the desperation of Ole that both of his most important centre-backs have been rushed back a little bit. And, with Varane, do you think that he'll be back in the month, but then is he going to have managed minutes until he's kind of found that level of fitness so that he doesn't kind of go back?
But before I touch upon that, I've obviously had an injury of my own, a big bump to the head, because I've just referred to Varane twice as being a Spaniard and playing for the Spanish national team, when of course he's French and he got injured playing for France. So let's just scratch the French bit and it's France. My bad. Look, difficulty in you coming into a very busy fixture period. If he's on schedule to return in and around that month period, we could see him back against Arsenal. And that's a Thursday night game. That's a midweek game. Now, again, it is the risk associated with throwing him in maybe on that Thursday and then the subsequent game on a weekend. It's a quick turnaround. He's had very little football at that point by, maybe 6 or 7 weeks. Ideally, what you'd want to integrate them gradually. And then as you approach that festive fixture program, when the games are coming thick and fast, Raphael Varane will be fighting fit and fully match fit for those games. To force it too early would be a risk. And you do, like you mentioned, there is a possibility there of a recurrence or re-injury, and you're going to miss a high number of games just because of that congested period.
So let's move it on. What do you think is the next biggest bit of injury news that people should be aware about going into this weekend?
Liverpool team news. We know that they play in the Champions League, are currently playing in the Champions League against Atletico, following the injury to Naby Keita last weekend, also hamstring injury. No definitive timeline on him, but what we do know, typically when we see Naby Keita, who has picked up muscular problems in the past, time loss injuries, he tends to spend around a month on the sidelines. So again, we could be looking around that 3 to 4 week period for Naby Keita, with James Milner also out and Harvey Elliott sidelined until early 2022. That opens up some spots in that midfield. Jordan Henderson, fine. Curtis Jones back, but we also see Fabinho in Liverpool's starting 11 tonight, which is great news. He's been managing a niggling knee problem. And also Thiago Alcantara, he's named on the bench. Now, he's been sidelined recently with a calf injury. It is a little bit too soon to be thinking about starting a game for him. So providing Fabinho comes through tonight, he may have his minutes managed depending on how the score goes against Atletico. But I think Thiago will probably start on the bench again this weekend. And like I say, just given the amount of time that he's had out and his injury problems since arriving at the club.
Now, I'm just going to interrupt or stop the talking about the injury news here, because I do want to remind people that we are doing the Movember challenge, and so that's why Ben is looking a little bit different with his beard off. That's why I've got my beard off for the first time in 7 years. So do make sure to subscribe to the channel, because we've got a load of content coming out, and it's not just kind of fun content. We're doing silly stuff like the other day where we shaved live on air with Lynn, and Lynn will be joining in her own fashion. But the thing is there's also going to be a lot of serious content out there that will hopefully go out to the community and help people with whatever problems they may have. So we're kind of just being here almost like, I don't know, would you say a big brother to the community, Ben, that we want people to know that you're not alone with whatever kind of problems you're facing. So we're going to be covering mental health. We're going to be covering testicular and prostate cancer as well. So there's quite a few big, hard-hitting topics where we'll be getting expert analysis as well, and also giving you links to things that are important with it. So I hope you find that useful. And like I said, do hit the subscribe button, and we'll be raising money. So all that kind of views, if you do share it with people, we'll be raising money for Movember. We won't be making money off of those videos. But let's take it back to what we're discussing today, Ben. And I guess we do have to bring it up. Antonio Conte at Tottenham. We discussed the other night kind of a little bit with Lynn about how I was a bit worried about maybe some of the Tottenham players getting back to those levels of fitness that his style will require. Do you think that him coming in mid-season is problematic maybe for somebody who wants his players to put such effort into games? Because Nuno's style required them not to sprint as much, not to kind of stretch themselves as much. And does that mean that they might have become a little bit kind of less fit? I forget the kind of term that you...
Deconditioned.
That's it. fantastic term there. They become deconditioned. Do you think that is a possibility at all, and maybe might hinder this new manager bounce that people are thinking will happen almost immediately at Tottenham?
What we have and the problems that Conte will have arriving at this period of time is just the sheer volume of games that Tottenham have. They're playing 3 games a week, with European Conference League games, and the issue is, getting those training sessions, those proper training sessions under your belt to get those players up to of a level to cope with the demands of Conte's style of play. That ain't going to happen this year. So really, it's about managing fires and prioritizing where he sees it, and maybe just having to do with and deal with what he's got at his disposal at this point. Because, until maybe that winter break in January, the games are going to be coming thick and fast. And physically, you have to factor in post-match recovery sessions. And then by the time you turn around, you're already looking at pre-match and tactics for those midweek games. And then again, you're playing on the Sunday. So look, it's not going to be easy during this interim period. And the only hope that you'd see is this. We've talked about it a lot, is this new manager bounce, and the fact that it's just this wave of enthusiasm, this maybe renewed belief, and this just respect that Antonio Conte will demand, from his players to go out there and perform, and knowing that if they don't, then potentially, they're on the chopping block, and he may, you would think that he's been promised some kind of transfer budget, whether that comes in January or whether that comes in the summer remains to be seen. But look, Antonio Conte will have made assurances, and things can't get any worse for Tottenham. Let's just put it that way. And they certainly can't get any worse for Harry Kane. So whatever happens from this point forward, it's got to be a positive step.
Oh, you upset me saying things like that, Ben, that it can only get better for them. Obviously, the Tottenham fans listening in will not want me to say this, but I was happy with that kind of continuous downward flow. The interesting thing for me with Antonio Conte is maybe taking it back to his first time in the Premier League and echoing a lot of the stuff that you said there. He'll be putting out fires, he'll be sorting out things. And with the Chelsea squad that he had back then, it was a very good squad, title challenging one. Obviously, the season before, they'd had the problems with Jose Mourinho, and so they had finished a lot lower than Tottenham are now. And so, obviously, people kind of say, oh, well, he brought Chelsea from that position up to that position, so he did a fantastic job. But I do think that the squad was pretty good anyway before he kind of came in. But one of the things that stood out for me was almost how it took him a little bit of time to bring in his ideology, because he had his August games, and in September it was actually Arsenal who defeated Chelsea 3-0, and after that point he then switched to the 3 at the back system, which after that game Chelsea went on a fantastic winning run, were almost unbeatable and looked absolutely fantastic. So it might take a bit more time, I'm basically saying, than people might think. That there probably will be a new manager bounce, and it's why I kind of trust people maybe like Son, who are already in form in that Tottenham team, maybe to carry on. But the likes of Harry Kane and others who might be a little bit deconditioned mentally and physically might take a bit of time to carry up, get up there. But also, interestingly, I do have a story of when I used to work at a hotel in the London area, and Antonio Conte, all the Premier League teams would stay there before they'd go to matches. And I just remember he was such a stickler for detail. We as the hotel staff were briefed that if players asked for room service, we had to deny it. If players, were kind of walking around in the foyer, we had to kind of make sure that a Chelsea staff member was notified if it was beyond hours. And the other thing was with the food situation, Conte made sure that they all having special food, special diets. I don't know if that's more of like a normal thing now with teams, but at the time, you know, as a younger person kind of working in the hotel industry, it just blew my mind. Every kind of detail, every bit was accounted for, and he was very controlling of the players' lives, which, you know, could be a reap of success, but at the same time, it might rub some of the players up the wrong way, Ben, mightn't it?
Do you know what? Suck eggs. Look, I mean, look, you're talking about players on multi-million-pound contracts who haven't been delivering. What cost or what price do you put on success?
Yeah.
And if Tottenham want to succeed, if Tottenham want to return to the Champions League, you know, do they want to be involved in the Europa Conference League? I mean, what's that? It's a Mickey Mouse competition, and at me, whatever you want. It's, you know, a third tier European competition for losers. For a club of Tottenham's stature that will have the belief of Harry Kane. Does Harry Kane want to be involved in that competition? Absolutely, categorically, no way. It's embarrassing. You look at that competition as an embarrassment. If they win it, you know, they should, you know, if they do win it, then look, it's another trophy in the cabinet. But these players, Harry Kane, should be in the Champions League. And if it requires somebody like Antonio Conte to come in, shake things up, instill some discipline, and really get these players performing as they should be, then, you know what, toe the party line. If you don't like it, get out the club.
Yeah. Well, I would just like to make a correction there, though, Ben. You said it would be another trophy to the cabinet, but of course we know that Tottenham don't have any trophies in the cabinet as of yet at the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Just thought I'd throw that out there. But
as an Arsenal supporter.
No, just as an impartial kind of football analyst, just saying facts. But I totally agree with you in terms of it. It's always interesting to me when people kind of talk about tough regime managers coming in and they might upset some players. But I totally agree with you. You know, these players, first and foremost, paid a lot of money. If I got paid however much they are a week, I'd be training my, you know, backside off non-stop. I wouldn't mind. You know, I'd love to be paid to work out and play football and do that. So it's a good opportunity. But the other thing is, you know, the words that you said, what price do you put on success? Your career is only, you know, a certain amount of time. And what I loved about kind of reading and watching documentaries about Sir Alex Ferguson was, you know, the day that they'd won the Premier League that season was the first day of the next season. He didn't want to let up. He was already planning ahead. And the shortness of these players' careers should be kind of embracing that ideology that, you know, there's no time off, that really you shouldn't let up, that maybe you can have some sort of time off at the end of a season, between seasons, but realistically, you know, you have to be working hard all the time. The final thing that I want to bring about with the Conte discussion, though, is who do we think is going to do well? I think Son. I'm not sure about Harry Kane, but he's such a fantastic striker that he does well. But Matt Doherty, I think he has to be under some consideration. I mean, could even Reguilon or Ryan Sessegnon, that could be an interesting situation there, that, you know, Reguilon has shown in bursts, in moments, that he's a fantastic kind of left back, but can he play in this more attacking system? And if so, if he can be like a Victor Moses or Alonso in that Conte season, my goodness, we've got another kind of really high scoring, fairly cheap defender that could be on our horizons.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's difficult at the minute. We're trying to second guess. I don't want to see his name, but I keep on getting drawn back because I have memories of a player that burst onto the scene 3-4 seasons ago. We talked about, you know, one of England's hottest prospects at the time, Dele Alli.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Harry Winks.
I'm not a fan of Harry Winks, to be honest.
I'm just joking with you. Dele Alli, yeah, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's been so many false dawns. He's underperformed. since Pochettino left, and arguably during his the latter stages of his Tottenham managerial career. If he doesn't do it under Conte, then for me, he's finished as a Tottenham player. He needs to go. He needs to move on. He needs to, find his mojo elsewhere. Because, like I say, the talent's there. He's produced it before, but for whatever reason, it just isn't stepping up to the plate at this moment in time. Now, if reports are to be believed, he spent, the off season throughout the summer with a personal trainer, getting himself in tip-top condition in terms of the preseason metrics, the sprints, all of those baseline measures. He was, way beyond almost everybody in that Tottenham squad. So physically, it's not fitness. So the issue can only be mentally, and it could be, is that because of maybe the role he's been asked to play, or is that because of the manager that he's worked under? Now, like I say, this will be Conte's come along, and if Conte kind of get him to play a tune, then, like I say, I think his time at Tottenham is up.
I think it's interesting because football as a collective has kind of said that for him under Nuno Espirito Santo, Ryan Mason, Jose Mourinho. He's had almost 3 managers, or at least 3 chances, even like you said under Pochettino, to kind of come back. And it maybe brings back to the point that I first said with Conte is, how long can these players underperform and still get back to that peak that they supposedly have? Because, he has been not great for a long while now, and will he still have that level of match sharpness? Will he have that creativity, that natural flair that he did all those seasons ago, where obviously he was unbelievable. He was a real joy to watch, and I'm messing about here sometimes with the Tottenham kind of stuff at Arsenal Tottenham, but as a genuine football fan, he was a great revelation to the scene. And so I do have worries and reservations, but like you said, if Conte can't do it, then he is probably that's his time up, and it'll be an interesting one to see. But I'll be keeping a close eye on the likes of Ndombele, Lo Celso, like I said, Son. Kane will be an interesting one, and those kind of at the back as well. Jared Brugler has asked a question. I don't know if they're on the right kind of stream here. Potentials trade. I'm going to ignore that one. But Marcus Magnuson has asked, is there any info at all about the Broja injury?
Not a lot, but we will hear from Ralph Hasenhüttl on Thursday ahead of Southampton's game on Friday evening against Aston Villa. What we do know, initially reported as a minor ankle problem, which was expected to be fine ahead of game week 10. Of course, we know, and since it hasn't been. And we've also seen training pictures from Staplewood yesterday. I think there was 60 plus shots of the guys training ahead of the match. And Broja was not a part of those. Now, that gives us some kind of indication that we're now talking, a good 10 days that he hasn't been training with the group. And that puts a major question mark, over his availability, certainly from the start. I'd also question whether Hasenhüttl would bring him back in, after last weekend's result. Shea Adams and Adam Armstrong done okay in that game, and it could be that he may name an unchanged team. And like I say, if Broja is fit, which at the minute looks like to be a major doubt, then it would be a spot on the bench.
I just looked up who DJ Moore is, and Jared, we're not talking about American football here, we're talking about the English Premier League. Do you have an opinion on wide receivers, Ben?
Yeah, great guys. All of them are just great. I have zero idea about the NFL, and I can make no apologies for that. It looks like an interesting sport, but I just don't have the time to be able to dedicate to understand all of the nuances in and around the game. So look, I'm balls deep in Premier League all day, every day. So Sorry.
I mean, with Jared, it's probably better if you tune in tomorrow, because I'll be talking to our man, Mr. Dr. Raj, and he knows everything about American sport. I think, everything. I'm not overplaying that at all. And yeah, I guess it's timely because we're talking about Tottenham, and they do have NFL games there at the new White Hart Lane Stadium, but we don't know much about it. I think one of the interesting ones for this weekend, and maybe going forward, is Kieran Tierney. Ben, have you got any discussion points around him, what his injury is? Will we be seeing him back?
This is fairly worrisome. Initially reported as heavy bruising, a big knock to the left ankle. It's kept him out of the last 3 now, if I recall correctly, 2 Premier League and the Carabao Cup. Now, ahead of each game, Mikel Arteta was fairly optimistic that Tierney would shake off this knock. He had been taking part in aspects of first-team training, but he was unable to complete a full session. Now, almost the writing was on the walls, or alarm bells started to ring in the Carabao Cup, where you would have expected maybe Nuno Tavares to start in that game against Leeds. He wasn't. He was kept on the bench. And that was maybe Mikel Arteta protecting the player, knowing that Kieran Tierney was going to be a doubt for the Villa game. When we heard for the Leicester game, and we heard from Mikel Arteta on the Friday morning, and he fully expected Tierney to train with the group and could have been available. He didn't make the matchday squad. Post-match, he's come out and he said, look, he hasn't been able to train with the guys, and now we don't know when he will return. Now, whether that's Mikel Arteta just being a little bit coy, maybe there's a little bit smoke and mirrors, or whether, further assessments or imaging has been carried out and they've discovered something new or not, we don't know. What can happen is injuries can evolve. Injuries can sometimes be a little bit worse than first feared, and they may have discovered something in there. But it's definitely a change in Mikel Arteta's tone with regards to Kieran Tierney. But what I would say is Arsenal have been on a great run. The last couple of performances when Tavares has come into the side have been excellent. He's been very impressive. So, in that regard, you want to think, well, why would you rush Kieran Tierney back? Of course, we've got an international break. You could keep him out of that matchday squad this weekend. That in turn may rule him out of the upcoming internationals for Scotland, although I'm sure he'd want to be involved in that. But from a personal standpoint, from an Arsenal standpoint, ideally, you'd say, you remain at the club, you remain at London Colney, you stay with us for the next 2 weeks, and then we prepare for game week 12 onwards.
I mean, does it give you a bit of hope, though, that he was in the provisional Scotland squad? Do you think that says to you, or is this another kind of situation where people overreact almost to information like that?
Yeah, look, I'll take those with a pinch of salt. What we do know, and for people who haven't heard the podcast I've mentioned before, international teams can call up any player, regardless of their current availability status. And it's not for the clubs to turn around and say, well, this player cannot attend. These players need to be assessed independently by each respective football federation or football association to determine their readiness for the upcoming internationals. Now, what I would say with Steve Clarke in Scotland and Mikel Arteta, they'll keep those open lines of communication. It seems as if he's a game week to game week consideration for Kieran Tierney. And therefore, maybe there's hope that he will respond well to treatment, that he can take part in a full session, and therefore he may be available for one or both or what have you of those World Cup qualifiers. So, look, in that regard, it's a bit of a positive, but I wouldn't hang your hat on anything to do with those squad lists necessarily, because, we heard from Gareth Southgate last international break when he was told that Reece James was going to be a part of that squad, and he expected him to play for Chelsea the following weekend, at which case Thomas Tuchel said, well, he may be playing for England, but it'll be the water polo team because he's rehabbing in the pool.
Yeah, I remember that one very well. It was a good remark from him. We got a question from Leonardus349. This was replying to your Twitter, putting this up there, letting people know to tune in. And he's asked, any news on Mount's illness?
All pretty quiet at the moment. Ahead of their Champions League tie against Malmo, Mason Mount hadn't trained fully with the squad and therefore wasn't or never did really come into consideration. However, I understand it's not COVID related, so it's not serious, it's not long term, and I would expect Mason Mount back on the training pitches ahead of this weekend, which gives him a strong possibility of returning to that matchday squad.
Leonardus also has asked the question, Mbeumo's fitness.
Yeah, so he was I think he was an unused substitute last weekend due to a niggling hamstring issue. Thomas Frank was always confident that he would return along with Ethan Pinnock. Pinnock played the game, Brian Mbeumo wasn't. And again, that was purely from a precautionary measure, just because it was the hamstring. The fact that he's been in and around the squad and he's been training, barring a setback or barring any kind of reaction, then I've actually got him back in my predicted lineup this week.
So I think we have covered as much injury news as we possibly can in our time, Ben. As we said here, we've done it early this week because we love chatting to everybody, answering your questions. And as always, just make sure to stay subscribed to the channel, because obviously Ben's put this up on Twitter, but if you have that notification button as well, then you'll know when we go live for these things. Tomorrow, I'll be on here with Dr. Raj talking about a load of discussion points, maybe going deeper into topics than usual. But for now, I'm going to wish everybody the best of luck with their teams. Hope you have a great game week 11 as well. And just stay tuned to the channel because we have all the most latest and breaking injury news updates. But yeah, goodbye.